This computer. Okay, great. We're ready to go here. So, I guess welcome, Chantal. Glad you could make it, and certainly appreciative of the time you can spend with us. Maybe we want to start by letting you do a brief intro and telling us who you are and what you do.
Sure. Okay, hi everyone. I am a physiotherapist working in the Ottawa region. I'm a graduate from University of Ottawa. I did a degree in Human Connects before this. I've been working as a physiotherapist specifically in neurorehabilitation from the day when I graduated, so a bit more than 22 years ago. The bulk of my work is currently in what we call private community care. So it's basically anybody in the community that needs neuro rehabilitation for whatever needs, they can access us. So people are either paying out of pocket or they're using it. We're a big city, so federal government sort of funding. If you have Sun Life or Great West Life, and then the other big portion of the work, or where it comes from vehicle accidents. So that's kind of where I do most of my work. And then if I narrow that down a little bit more, then I would say the big portion of the people I tend to work with are severely brain injured people from vehicle accidents, and then spinal cord injury is the other big one. Although I have a salt and pepper uh, of different types of people. So I work with people with MS, cerebral palsy, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. They're kind of sprinkled throughout my caseload, depending what the needs are. But that's kind of the bulk of my work. And then if you narrow that down even more, my sort of research, I'm a professor at University of Ottawa as well as Algonquin, and I teach professional development courses to other physiotherapists in the province of Quebec. If you narrow that down even more, my big thing over, I would say, the last 10, 15 years is how do we maintain people's ability to keep standing and keep walking. And so I've really narrowed it down to specifically in neuro rehab. So, and when we mean neuro rehab, we really mean anything that has to do with a disorder that involves brain and peripheral nerves, I guess, but less so peripheral nerves. So I've really narrowed it down. I've become very passionate and very adamant that I think we can keep persons like you standing and walking and optimizing how you can keep that, because I think what I've become to understand is the minute the proverbial PTs, OTs and doctors, the minute we put you in a wheelchair, we're also taking many years away from your life, because there's a lot of, as much as we're preventing you from falling, we're also preventing you from having a really good physical health. And we can talk about that in a second, but that's my intro.
Great. So given the range of neurological disorders you are experienced with, what is the treatment plan like? Are there some similarities or key differences?
Well, I'm glad you guys asked that question. So I know it was in the questions that you guys proposed to ask, and I'm hoping that all of you guys are asking yourself that same question, because some of the research that I've been able to do over the past few years, and some of it is my own thinking, and some of it is sort of coming from what we know about physical health. Here's the thing, and Donna, who has the pleasure of being tortured by me weekly, knows that one thing that we know, whether you're 2 or 92, whether you've got a brain injury or a spinal cord injury, it doesn't really matter what your disorder is. One thing you know is you absolutely have to get back to or keep up with your physical health. And so Mark, if you give me 2 seconds to explain what that is, I'll get to you what our treatment plan is. So what I mean by physical health is what we're starting to understand. And just so you guys know, you're more likely today, even though you have this disorder, you are more likely to die from being sedentary or sitting all the time than you are of your disease. That's one thing we know. So having a sedentary quote unquote life is the third biggest cause of early death nowadays worldwide. So the first one is cardiovascular and diabetes. So you're not eating well and all that stuff. And then the second one is smoking. And the third one is literally sedentary lifestyle. So you're not moving enough.
Sorry, can I interrupt for a second? I would suspect that sitting is probably leading to the heart disease and stuff like
yes. that. Yes. Well, it's exactly. And then it's all folded in, right? The fact that we're sitting a lot. So, so my job as a physiotherapist has very much changed, because whereby before we were saying, please sit in a wheelchair. We're all going to feel better if you do that. We're like, okay, no, please, let's just keep you going, because we know we're going to extend your lifespan by that. So coming back to what our care plan is, we look at, okay, well then what is physical health? Physical health is first and foremost your cardiovascular. You need to have activities weekly where it's pumping your heart. And this is probably your number one question. You're going to be like, well, how do I do that? We can talk about that in a second. The other big one is physical strength. You absolutely need to keep up with your physical strength. And so for some of you guys, it means maybe that you still get to carry stuff. Like you're going to, for me, for example, if I give you the example of me, I'm a fairly healthy 50-something-year-old. If I go to Costco, and you know how Costco gives you these big boxes, I don't let my 27-year-old boys carry the box in. I carry the box in, because that is like strength training. And that's the kind of stuff that we don't do enough of still. So if I looked at somebody like Donna, which I'm assuming you guys are going to look very similar, I'd be like, no, carry the things that are a little heavier, because it's going to keep your physical strength. And if you can't do that, then buy yourself some weights and some TheraBands and start doing some physical strength. And the last thing we really focus on is agility and balance, which is what you guys need the most. So whereby for many years, we used to say with people with ataxia, we used to be like, let's weigh them down. We used to make sure that people were hanging on to walkers, and we really steered away from balance work, because all we wanted to do is we wanted to maintain you guys here and make sure you didn't fall. Now the new thinking is, do you guys know what a Bosu ball, some of these wobble balls? Yeah, like now we're like, let's put you on one of those. And then some of you guys go, are you kidding me? Like I can barely stand on the ground and you want me to stand on this ball? I'm definitely going to fall. But what we know is that if we put you on that, it actually improves your ataxia. And it took us a long time to get there, because it sounds completely mind-blowing, but that's what we're doing. So if you want to know what my treatment plan is for people like yourselves, is I'll be like, are you doing your cardio? And if you're not, then we're going to figure that out together. We're going to go, okay, we're going to look at Melissa, or we're going to look at Sandra, and we're going to go, what can you do weekly that you have some good cardio workout, despite the fact that you can barely stand or walk, right? That's the first. And then the next thing, we're going to look at strength training. Like Donna and I made some really big breakthroughs recently. She kept saying, my knees hurt. And I'm like, I think you need to strengthen your quads. And then it was really weird, because you're thinking, well, my muscles are wasting. Should I really do strength training? And it's like, yes, as a matter of fact. And in Donna, right, we had some really good, like once we started strengthening your quads, even though they're wasting, you actually had less pain in your knees, because really you still need to do this stuff despite the fact that your muscles are wasting. And so I feel like that's the mistake we made for about 20 years. Definitely things are changing. And I think this is what we would offer nowadays, which is mind-boggling, because you would be like, I don't want to do strength training. I feel like there's no muscles left, but it is definitely the thing to do.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm an assistant coach in boxing and Muay Thai and stuff. And, with new people, you always get this thing, well, this hurts, or it hurts when I do this, or I can't do that. And usually my approach is, great, do more of it, right?
Yeah, because Mark, our thinking, or to all of you guys, here's our thinking, right? Like we're built now, like, and I'm really sad to hear that all of you guys are suffering with some of this, because I definitely feel like there's some unfairness. Like I said to Donna before, I struggle with sometimes my weeks of work because I get home, I'm really healthy, thankfully still. And I feel like, wow, that's so unfair. I get to be healthy and you guys get to struggle. I feel like the world is a bit warped. However, here's what we know. When we are genetically built nowadays, we're genetically built like Lamborghinis, right? Like never before, even despite the fact that you guys have a disease or a disorder, never before we have been this physically healthy or potentially healthy. But also, like never before, we've never been this lazy. Like as a society, we're couch potatoes. And so what excites me about this as a physio is I'm like, well, it doesn't matter how far ahead you are in your disease. I'm just going to assume like you're everybody else in the world and you're just not moving enough. So just by default, me getting you moving is going to make you feel better. So really my job as a physiotherapist has become so easy. I just get you guys to do strength training, stretching, and cardio, and you're actually feeling better. And I feel like I'm a little like angel from the God, but I'm not. We're just all lazy and I'm just making you guys move, right? So it's really that. I think all of you guys just assume none of you guys are doing enough, because the only people I would work with that would be like, you know what, I think you're doing too much, is the Olympian that just came out of the Olympics who probably worked 110%. That's the only people in my mind who've probably tortured their bodies more than they need to be. All of us fall under the bracket of we're not doing enough. All of us. So it's actually an easy solution, right?
Um, how would you approach someone new, let's say they're newly diagnosed, that might be of the mind that they can't do anything to improve, or whatever they do try is not worth it because they're gonna go downhill anyways.
Right. And this is where it's hard. Like I come back to, I really feel for you guys, because as much as I've devoted my life to this kind of work, I still don't live in your shoes. Like I still don't wake up every morning knowing that you might have lost some today. And I think, Mark, that's actually a really hard battle for people. And I think some of my work with persons who have a hard time seeing the value of staying healthy physically has been much more focused on, let's do something that you would like to do. So I don't just stay, I see you in your home, but I don't just stay in your home. Like if you're somebody and you used to be able to cross country ski, let's say last year, and this year you can kind of cross country ski, but you really can't, and you think you have to give it up. Well, this is where I could jump in. I could be like, well, let's go cross country skiing together. Because if I go with you and I see you fall, let's say, I'll be able to say, well, you probably didn't injure yourself. I saw the fall. I'm a physiotherapist. I kind of know how you move. So one thing that I've been able to offer people who are sort of hesitant about that is we can just keep moving with the things you like to do, but we do it in parallel. So I go with you, or we find other people, right? Remember that I'm not the only one in health science who can help you. There's kinesiologists, there's trainers, there's yoga teachers, there's all kinds of stuff up there, massage therapists, there's lots of people. Um, but sometimes I think, Mark, to answer your question, it's trial and error. I think if I can convince somebody to do something with me, for 4 or 5 weeks at a time and get them to see some of the changes, then there's usually a bit of buy-in of like,
Right,
maybe.
right. Um, and your business is called Action Potential Rehabilitation. What does action potential mean?
So I work under the umbrella of somebody else. So this is two physiotherapists who own the clinic that I work for. Action potential is it's actually a scientific term that describes what a nervous, like a signal, like, so when the brain sends a signal to my muscles and the peripheral nerves, there is something called the P wave, and that's called the action potential.
Is it like inertia? kind of idea?
Similar, yeah, yeah. So it's the potential that your nerves have, maximum potential for putting out, power or muscle contraction.
Right. And sorry, I'm just reading the questions here.
That's okay, yeah.
What are sort of newer physiotherapy treatments that maybe weren't in use before that you're seeing some benefit from?
So a little bit like you were saying, Mark. So I think we're moving away. I don't know how new to this you guys are. Some of you guys, if you were a little few years back, specifically to ataxia, what we used to do is we used to put like weights on your ankles, weights on your wrist. We used to weigh you down because we felt like if we weighed you down, you would feel more stable. And it was true while we weighed you. But the minute we took the weights off, you guys would fly off like little hummingbirds because your ataxia was like, ah! And it makes sense, right? It's a bit like when you wear heavy ski boots or you wear heavy winter boots and you take them off and your feet feel like they're flying off. And then we were like, okay, this isn't working. So back to what I was saying in the beginning, the newer stuff is much more like boxing, yoga, anything that challenges your balance, which is essentially at the beginning counterintuitive, but now we're like, oh, you have balance issues. We should not just make you more stable. We should challenge your balance.
Right.
And when we challenge your balance, all of a sudden your ataxia feels a little bit better, actually.
For sure. Like when everything's kind of locked down now, right? So I'm doing the best I can. But honestly, when I was at the gym helping coach Muay Thai, and there are all these people swimming around me, and I had to watch out and to be really cognizant of stuff. And occasionally my balance would get challenged. That's when I was at my best.
Yeah, and I could like this is what we're really, really noticing. And you know what we tie into that, guys? We're starting to tie into the I don't have a problem with you falling. Where I think before our biggest fear, and that's still around, I would say, but it's really starting to change. But for a long time, our biggest fear was you guys falling. But now we're starting to think, you know what? How about I teach you how to fall? Because you're going to fall. You're about to
Right.
fall for the next 10, 20, 15 years. And so how about instead of me strapping you to a walker or a wheelchair, which we both know is not the best for you, how's about I just teach you how to fall? And then from that, the work that Donna and I did, and this is probably the biggest breakthrough we've done, guys, is do you guys know what your biggest fear about falling is? Your biggest fear about falling is not hurting yourself. Your biggest fear about falling is not being able to get up from the ground by yourself. That's your biggest fear. Your biggest fear is getting up from the floor. And so what we've understood is if we spend tons of time teaching you how to get up from the floor, either with the use of a wall or the use of a chair or the use of furniture, or maybe the use of nothing, there's ways of teaching you. Once we teach you that, all of a sudden you fall less. And you know why? Because part of you are falling, yes, part of your disease, but part of you are falling because you're so afraid of falling that you brace like this. And instead of trying to take what we call postural control, take little steps or make adjustments, you brace and you fall down like a tree.
It's also, I think, the issue is if you don't know how to fall and then you fall, you panic out of fear, right?
Yeah.
And then you throw down your arm, break a wrist or whatever.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about fractures, because fractured wrists, fractured hips for sure are not something we want to see. But what the World Health Organization has now started seeing is you are still better off walking for as long as you possibly can, even though you're at risk of fracturing your wrist, because that outweighs the health benefits. So as much as I don't want you to break a bone, walking for as long as you can still is better than the fractured wrist. And this is new stuff, guys. So so it's, I mean, it's all sounds simple, and some of you're like, yeah, well, how do I get from that to that? Well, it's not easy. It takes a lot of collaborative work with either your OT or a PT or even your kinesiologist, but it's definitely doable. Like we've been pushing out people using walkers and chairs by 5 to 10 years. That's huge. That's huge. Like where people used to be, in walkers at the age of 45 or 50, now there's 65 and 70 with ataxia. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very counterintuitive the way we've sort of been doing things. And I mean, I can only say this because I've had the benefit of training this way for a long time. But if I didn't have that, who knows where I'd be right now.
Yeah.
But it's a real, it's like in my mind, the problem is the solution, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and it sounds weird to say, but we just have to work harder, not necessarily like by doing a million push-ups, but just work smarter.
Yeah, we have to work smarter. And I think we have to, like, this is definitely, like I said, the newer work. The newer work is balance training, which is very counterintuitive for somebody who does not have good balance. And then the other one is strength training, which is, again, feels counterintuitive for somebody who's losing muscle mass from a disease. But those are the two things that you guys, all of you, if you're not doing it, start doing it. And if you don't know where to start, because that's going to be one of your questions for sure, I am happy to do to set you up either with myself or some of my colleagues. We could do a simple Zoom consult, for half an hour or an hour. You tell me, what you're doing, what you would like to do, and then we brainstorm what's in your community. We brainstorm. You'd be surprised how little we have to change to make you that much better. And what we do is like I said to Donna, we buy you time. We buy you time as the disease progresses. Well, I mean, I'm assuming most of you are progressive. Not all problems with ataxia are progressive, right? Because you can have a brain injury and now you have the cerebellum that's damaged and you're ataxic and it doesn't get worse. But most of you sounds like you have some kind of progressive ataxia. Right. So what we do is we buy you time. We buy you time.
And do you have partners in other countries? I know some of the people here are from the US and
yeah, no, I don't. That's a really good question. I don't. Not in other countries, sadly. That would be nice, but no, I don't even know where we would start. But right. I'm not the only sort of new thinking physiotherapist. There's a lot of us now understanding that this is what we need to do specifically for ataxia, because ataxia has been a mystery to us for many, many decades. But now we understand it, and it's exciting for you guys. I think it's very exciting for you guys.
Back on the topic of falling, have you looked into break falls, or is that what you like in martial arts? We have this thing called break falling, right? Because honestly, in stuff like judo, you're gonna be on your ass like 80% of the time, right?
Oh yeah.
So you better learn how to fall. So there's some really good videos I'll have to share with you where they break down how to do a break fall. There are a few.
That would be great. I mean, I have some from what we've built from a therapeutic perspective, but it would be really cool to see how they do it in martial art and sort of see if we can blend it. That would be very neat.
And it's cool that there are people like you and I've seen other people around that are implementing some of these, but honestly, in the East, these have been around for thousands of years.
Really, eh?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So it's like, not that I know anything, but obviously they do, right?
Yeah, well, I know some of the work that I've been able to do stems from, I was able to work in Latin America. So I lived in Nicaragua and Honduras for 7 years. And then I came back to Canada or Ottawa in 2009. And I think for me, the big switch has been, I have seen people who lives in mud huts who have no access to wheelchairs, who have no access to walkers, and they'll have the same issues if you like ataxia is everywhere, right? And nobody's spared. And what was interesting to see is those guys, they just go about, like they just walk, the drunken sailor walk is what I call it. And in those countries, nobody is scared of looking drunk, because that's the biggest issue with ataxia. You walk around and everybody thinks you've had too many beers. But in those countries, people just go about because they're much more worried about feeding themselves,
Right.
getting their kids to school,
They
getting
have bigger problems.
yeah, so they have bigger problems. So they don't get wrapped up in the, what if I hurt my wrist? What if what if my neighbor sees me fall? That'll be embarrassing. They're like, their concerns are way beyond that. And looking at them, we were able to see, oh, that's interesting. If we don't put them in a wheelchair, they actually don't need one until much later. So I'm a really big anti-wheelchair user till you actually need it, and then we'll talk.
Right. Susan asked a question. She has an issue with the rotator cuff.
Yeah.
And it's not like a bone that's gonna heal pretty reasonably quickly. And what sort of therapy do you use to address that issue where that is inhibiting her from engaging in some movements that may help?
So rotator cuff issues tend to be rotator cuff, by the way, your issue is back here. And it tends to be from a weak bulk of muscles back here. So it tends to be from somebody who spends a lot of time here. Okay. So you're really tight here and you're not strong enough there. And then what happens is your rotator cuff tendon starts to being unhappy. So our usual go-to, and this is apart from like you've slipped on the ice. Like if you've slipped on the ice and you fell, that's a whole other injury. But if it's just your rotator cuff and it just starts bugging you, then it's probably that you're not doing enough strength training back here, because we spend a lot of our times here, and you're not stretching enough here. So for me, it's always a very simple solution. We do a bunch of stretches this way and opening up, and we do a bunch of strengthening this way. And there's some really, really simple exercises for that kind of stuff.
There's another thing that I wanted to point out that I found really helpful. So like you said, from sitting a lot, this area up here gets all screwed up. And I found an easy way to reset it. It's just by hanging. Grab a pole and just use your body weight and hang, and all of this stuff comes out of, it gets loose, and that's great.
And that's a great, and something even more sort of groundbreaking and simple is literally just lying flat on the floor, no pillow, and just let it stretch out. I think none of us do enough of that, actually. Yeah. That's something I introduced to Donna. I said, like, let's just get on the floor and lie on the floor. And man, you'd be impressed the difference of the feel from, because you're like, oh no, but I lie in my bed. Not the same, not the same, not the same. It's just not. So it's a simple way to start, but yeah.
And I've read a couple of Bruce Lee books, and what I've gone back into recently is a lot of isometric work. We don't everyone knows planks, right? But there's like if you can hold your arms, my arms disappeared, it's by me. But if you can hold up your arms, it's great, right? But when they say to someone, hold up your arms, keep it there, I'm going to start at the timer at 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And then you're fine for like the first minute. And then your stomach starts to go and all the stuff, you start wobbling and.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I can't help reiterate. I don't know if all of you are is everybody from Ottawa or not necessarily?
No, we're from all over.
Oh, yeah, I see some people from, okay. Like usually, I think nowadays in our communities, it doesn't really matter where you live. I know COVID's sort of an unfortunate situation right now, but in non-COVID times, there are always, always, always community exercise groups, always. And so I think if you're not sure where to start and you're like, you know what, she's right, I need to start moving more, just plug into any community group. There are tons and tons and tons and tons of community groups out there. And if you have anybody who has access to internet, can just Google literally. So I think just get moving. Like literally, I just tell people, just get moving first, and then come to me and I'll be able to sort out specifically what you specifically might need. But you know, the common mistake that people have with ataxia, especially progressive ataxia, is you become very afraid of moving. You become very afraid of exercising, and so you don't. And you literally are shaving 5 to 10 years off of your life just by doing that.
Yeah, and it's a tricky thing to balance. Like I see this all the time when, like, at the gym or whatever, people will say, oh, I don't go to the gym because I'm not in shape. Well, that's why you need to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
And sometimes we get in that trap. I'm not going to do this thing because I have ataxia or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's the reason why you have to do that thing.
Well, and I would say you have to do, like, we speak about ataxia. I work all day long with other people with definitely disease and disorder. I think it's whether it's MS, even Parkinson's. Like we've become very adamant with somebody with Parkinson's, get working out, get doing some exercise. We're no longer accepting the label of like, well, my physical body is breaking down, so I guess I just have to rest. It's like, well, no, actually.
Right.
We now know differently. And so, although in saying that, I can appreciate that some of you guys might be anxious, not know where to start. I think a really good place to start is local physiotherapists, even kinesiologists, local kinesiologists, trainers. Reach out to somebody who is in what we call the physical health world, and just reach out and say, I want to get moving again. And even if they know nothing about ataxia, nothing at all, even if you just said, I wanted to do some cardiovascular training and some strength training, they would be able to help you. Even if they knew nothing about ataxia, it would be that beneficial. And you only have to do it like twice a week to get really, really big benefits. So,
well, this has been a great conversation. How does anyone get in touch with you if they want to?
I'm not sure. I could probably put it, you know what, I'll put it in the chat. I'll put my name and my information in the chat group after. So I'll just type it, because you guys are going to stay on and chat after.
Right. We could also just pass on your information if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Please send a follow-up after the meeting.
Sure.
But let me encourage everyone to go ahead and unmute themselves. I've allowed you to do that, so go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question, and kindly raise your hand or type your name in the chat and we'll get to you. So anybody have any questions? Oh, yeah, David, do you have a question?
Yeah. A question to Chantal. I'm picked up on your community exercise classes. I'm in Port Dover, South Hamilton, and Tiltonburg, Stonebridge Wellness, Community Wellness. They give exercises 3 times a week on Zoom and in your own house. And
wonderful.
It's and also I'm doing standing Pilates. I cannot do the one on the mat because I can't get up, but I like standing. But it helps my balance.
Yes.
And it's just a great form of exercise. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I think it's wonderful. And David, you bring the point that I was trying to said earlier. David, if you can't get up from the floor, I would say to you, find somebody who can teach you how to do that, because you'd be surprised with a little bit of practice and a little bit of problem solving how you can regain that ability.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I'm going to try myself and see
Yeah.
in a controlled area with walls beside me or chairs, and
And you
just
know, and we might be able to do this. Like David, if you think to yourself, and this is all of you guys, if I say to you the one thing you need to learn again is how to get off the floor, and you're like, oh, but I really don't know how to do that. I'm thinking out loud, but we could probably do that as a Zoom. Like we could, I have so many tricks of the trade for getting off the floor. We could probably all do that on Zoom or one at a time on Zoom. So David, if you can't figure it out, contact me. It'll probably take half an hour of brainstorming. You'd be surprised. You would be very surprised.
oh
Yeah.
uh,
There are lots of there's
Questions?
videos I can share with you on
Oh,
that too.
yeah.
I've learned how to get off the floor a little bit better just by practicing.
Yeah.
And at first, there's going to be this little voice in your head that's saying you can't do it, but you just have to learn how to shut that up and say, I'm in charge. You're not going to tell me what to do. And I think one of the other problems with people, when we think we can't do something, we're in our head too much. And just, we have to find, like you said, we have to find a good coach and stop thinking that we know the answers to everything and just find someone that can actually help us.
One thing that's helped, I use the example of Donna, but I have other people that I work with that have ataxia. One thing that I find has helped is by giving you the cueing. So Mark is not wrong. Like if you get on the floor, all of a sudden there's going to be a little voice going, what are we doing? This is stupid. Like we can't do this. You know, this is not going to work. Like look at us shaking already. And one thing that I've been saying all along, Donna and I laugh about this, but I'm like, I say to Donna, I'm like, embrace the sway, girl, because when you feel like the room,
I hate when she says that.
yeah, she hates it. But when you feel like the room is going, you're naturally going to want to do this, right? All ataxic people do this. They're like, if I do this really strong, the room will stop shaking. But I say in moments like when you're trying to get off a floor, let's say for the first time in a long time, what I would rather you do is relax and embrace the sway. So let yourself sway, because by letting yourself sway, you're also giving you opportunity for the rest of your body to do what it needs to do. But if you're trying to stop the sway and you're doing this, nothing else is going to happen. You're shutting everything down. So I'm like, embrace the sway, girl, like find the rhythm or something, but don't try to stop the sway so much. I think that's also a classic mistake that we think that it's smart, but it's not smart. So David, if you're going to try and get up from the floor, I want you to relax into it and let the sway take it, let the sway do what it needs to do while you do the movement. And that works brilliantly. Yeah. Hard to do emotionally because you don't want to do that. But man, once you learn to do that, it works really well.
Yeah, you've highlighted a very valid point. I'm tense. And,
yeah, well, everybody does. And I suspect if I was ataxic, I would do the same. Like I kind of compare ataxia, like when I don't do well on boats. Like I'm always feeling like the boat is like making me very sick. I kind of feel it's a bit like that. And I do the same on the boat, right? Instead of just like walking around like the drunken sailors. So I think if some of you guys could learn to do that, you'll see all of a sudden like, wait, I feel like my ataxia is better. And it's like, it's not that it's better, it's you're not making it worse.
And the other sort of ironic, contradictory thing is even like when you're doing boxing or martial arts, the way to get better is to relax, right? Yeah. When you're tense, you don't achieve anything. And you can actually get injured when you're so tense. There are actually studies where it's called the ragdoll effect, where people are so drunk, they're so relaxed, they can get hit by a car and be okay.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Like, and so, and guys, I really can appreciate, like some of you, I can appreciate the fear. Like I tell Donna this all the time, and I'm like, what the sway I can see is probably nothing to what you're feeling. And I can appreciate that. It's not comfortable and it's not pleasant to fall. All of you guys have fallen. It's not pleasant. I can appreciate trying to like, I don't want to fall again today because it's not fun. So it's hard to sort of relax into that. But this is some of the work that I tend to do with persons like yourself. Like I would give you the task of strength training and cardio, but we would spend most of our time trying to figure that piece out. Like, how do I embrace the sway? How do I get up from the floor? And this is really fun work because people, yeah, do discover a whole new level of function just doing that kind of work.
Sure. Is there anyone else that had a question?
Yes, me.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, go ahead, Lori. And then we'll go to Jesse afterwards.
Is there a cost for this?
Is there a cost? Well, it depends. We would have to look at that for sure. I do work for a clinic, so I don't necessarily get to decide on costs like that. It depends. It depends how we would set it up for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Jesse?
Yeah, can you recommend anyone that works in Hamilton, Ontario?
I don't know anybody in Hamilton. The only thing, Jesse, that I know about Hamilton is it's a very progressive rehab or physiotherapy thinking. So these guys have been thinking about this stuff ahead of time. So I think if you start calling around and asking, and here's your clue, guys, when you're looking for somebody and you say, you know, I have progressive aphasia, you'll know the right person, because if the person is suggesting that you stay with your walker and it's safer and make sure you put on your brakes that's the wrong person for you. You don't want to work with those people. That's not
Jesse,
what you're looking for.
Jesse, get in touch with Lisa.
Oh,
Okay.
Because Lisa's in Hamilton. She has physio.
All right.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to know, obviously in my troubles with crowds or more people, and which is typical, I tend to not fall at home because I am very comfortable and I'm very active at home, and I continue with that. But any recommendations for when right now COVID's been nice because people stay 6 feet away from me.
yeah.
Any suggestions when things hopefully go back to normal at some point? That balance, I know working on my balance will help, but I just do things like practice my balance between the doorway.
Some of the typical balance exercises, I think that somebody like you might be able to benefit. Like, and I do this with Donna. So, I mean, now it's winter, but some of the really, really effective balance guys, walking barefoot on your grassy fields in the front. That's a really, really good. So that would be for you. Like, if you tell me you want to be better walker in crowds, that's the first thing you and I would be doing. And
Okay.
and if you didn't have any hills in your backyard or slopes, we would go find grass and hills and slopes, and then we would.
Or Melissa,
I have plenty.
Like,
I have plenty. So
Melissa probably has lots of snow around her right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't go out. I avoid going out because I can't seem to get my comfort, on this ice and snowy surface. So
Yeah, and it's a vicious circle, right? Like, yeah, and it's interesting because the comfort piece of it is not even the disease itself, and that's what's taking away from your mobility. And so, yeah, this is where I wish
example,
I
I can walk. An example is I can walk 3 miles around the golf course and have no problem. If you put me on a sidewalk, I have lots of problems. Just because I'm not used to that. And when I'm on a sidewalk and there's, I feel like I should stay between the lines. Whereas when I walk around the golf course, there's no lines, it's open space.
Yeah, and that's a fair thing with ataxia. Like, you sounds like when you're on the golf course, you're embracing this way, right? You're just kind of stepping, you got lots of room. And when you're more constrained, some of the stuff that I've given to Donna is practice standing. None of you probably can do this because it's scary, but practice in your own home. You can find a wall or whatever. Practice standing with your feet together. because that's what walking on the sidewalk is. It's very narrow. So instead of like, look at me, I can stand by myself without my walker. How about impress me, stand with your feet together and go, look at me, I can stand without my walker. And those are really good in-home practice exercises. But for you, Melissa, that's probably what you probably could benefit is get practicing with your feet together, no holding on, do a lot of that indoors, and you're going to see those narrow pathways are going to get easier just by default.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I have a question really quick.
Yeah, Bristol.
So a lot of us on here struggle with fatigue, like well, you know what? I'll speak for myself, but I'm assuming a lot of people are dealing with the effects of fatigue and how that affects getting out and moving. I mean, I understand that it's important, but what do you have to say to that?
Well, if you tell me that you're not doing any cardiovascular activity, and let's define cardiovascular activity. So right now the guidelines are 22 minutes a day. You should have your heart be pumping more than just when you're washing the dishes. So it has to be for like, whew, I just came up from the laundry room, that kind of like pumping your heart. And if you're not actually doing that, and you can do it in blocks of 10, so you can do 10 in the morning and 10 at night. So Donna, for example, we got her on a stationary bike and I'm like, get biking. And all of a sudden you actually had started feeling less tired, ironically, right? You feel less tired when you actually pump blood through your body. So I would say, don't get caught up with the, I'm too tired to exercise. You're probably tired because you're not exercising. And so for somebody, for all of you, a stationary bike is probably the best thing for you because it's probably what you can do where you can pedal fast enough to get the heart rate elevation that you need. But don't underestimate it. You could do 5 minutes and get tons of benefits from it. Don't underestimate how much you need to do. I think we're stuck in the participation days, you know, where everybody was like 3 minutes a day, and it's like, it's not.
Well,
it could be 10 minutes.
Our American friends probably don't know what participation is.
Oh, right. Well, I mean, it's a program we used to have in Canada, but you don't underestimate what 5-10 minutes does. So I would say, Bristol, if you know you're not busting your chops, getting your heart pumped, start with that. And then you might actually start seeing, and I could explain to you in a 3-hour lecture why that's going to happen, but you probably don't want to hear me say that. But so just trust me, try it, and you'll see slowly, you'll be like, wow, is it just me or I have more energy? It's like, yeah, you'll definitely have more energy. You'll definitely have more energy. So I would start there. Stationary bikes, they're all over Kijiji. Everybody sells them. Nobody wants them.
Is there anyone, Kathy?
Hi, I have both 2 knee replacements, and I tried getting on the floor the other day after Donna mentioned it. And because I tried not to do that because the last time I fell, I broke my wrist. And I can get myself up, but kneeling is really not pleasant feeling. But do you have any other hints or?
Well, we could certainly, we could certainly take a few minutes to look at how you're doing it and how we minimize the discomfort through the knee.
The only way I know how to get up is to roll onto my knees and then pull myself up. Yeah,
and that's the best way to do it. That's the quick and dirty way. It's, in theory, it should be totally fine. Like your knees are probably as much.
I've been told it won't hurt them.
No,
it just doesn't feel
exactly.
nice.
They're probably the healthiest thing of your body. Not pleasant. The sensation.
Can I just cut in, Chantal? Remember I told you last week my knees. I was the same as you, Kathy. I could not kneel down and look for an earring I dropped or anything.
Yeah.
But my knees are so much better because I stretch them every day now, and I get on my knees every day.
So it
makes a difference. I think once you start, it is quite painful, but the benefits are amazing when you continue with it.
So Kathy, I think you want to definitely confirm it's not harmful. It's unpleasant, but it's not harmful. And
Right.
definitely the more you do it, the more tolerant your knees will become. 100%.
Right.
100%.
It's amazing.
Yeah, because I do the exercise. I ride the bike 75, 80 kilometers a week. So, and I do other programs too. So
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I would definitely make sure that your number one thing, guys, is you need to be able to get off the floor. That's your.
I agree. That's my, and I have trouble walking on the lawn and stuff like that. The uneven is
It's terrible.
really hard.
So don't make the classic mistake that, oh, this is too hard. I am no longer putting this in my repertoire of activities I can do.
Which I do.
Yeah. Like what I would do is I would say, like, there's different ways of doing it. But I would say, no, I'm actually going to practice this because it's important for me to have it. And then you find out how to practice it. Like, obviously I wouldn't go out there by myself, right? Like I would have somebody beside me but I would never shy away from it. Keep into it, especially if it's stuff that's part of our lives. Like, you know, obviously you're going to give up downhill skiing because you kind of don't need downhill skiing to live, but being able to walk in your own backyard would be nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So don't fall into the trap we've been saying before. We're like, well, Kathy, it's probably time that you don't go to your garden anymore. And it's like, no, I don't think so.
Well, my birth mother also has SCA too. And she's been in a wheelchair for a couple of years now. And she's so afraid, and I've always sworn I'm not going to get that afraid. And I told her, I says, don't just drop, make yourself balance when you stand up and you transfer, because she falls when she transfers. And
I think the falling comes from the fear. Like I'm pretty.
Yes, I know for sure.
Yeah, like the more afraid, the more rigid we become, and the less able we call this postural control, that we can make adjustments. Yeah. Oh, that's good. It sounds like you're doing a lot of good things.
Well, I've been exercising. When I found out in 2008, I thought, well, I have lung issues as well. Thought I have to start. I did aquafit until the pool, until COVID, and
wonderful.
And I figured that's my job, is to keep myself moving.
Yeah.
But getting off the floor is the problem.
Yeah. Keep at it though. Keep at it. And when you get off the floor, there's no scores for how beautiful it is, eh?
Well, it's not.
It's not cute.
Like I tell people, like, well, how do I do it? And I'm like, just get off the floor. Like if I meet you guys for the very first time, I'm like, Kathy, get on the floor. And you're like, okay, how do I do it? I don't care how you do it, Kathy, just get on the floor. And I'll say, get up. How do I get up? I don't care, just get up. And then we'll take it from there. There are no scores for how nice it is. It's the task is to being able to do it.
Yeah, montage of Ataxia getting up off the floor would probably garner millions of hits on social media.
Did
Think about the money we could make for Hope for Ataxia.
Right? Yeah.
Did anybody else have any questions? Joe?
Yeah.
Jackie, go ahead.
Is there a video you would recommend for a falling? You say teach you to fall.
No, but I'm starting to think now that I need to start making some, because like I said, I teach other physios in the province of Quebec. Like I teach, 70 physios at a time sometimes, and everybody's the same, like, because even physios are asking me, how do I teach people how to fall? So I'm starting to think, Jackie, that I need to start making my own physio and put it on YouTube or something. No, I don't, because I feel like for me, I kind of do it more towards like what your skill level is. So everybody's skill level is slightly different. Yeah.
I know some videos, and they certainly break things down, but it's like a normal person breaking things down. We have to break it down even more.
Well, I can tell you, I was doing some work this morning with a lady who's a very ataxic, and one of the things that I tend to do, and I'm going to show you guys this, is I tend to take it from here. So I don't know how well you can see me, but now I'm on a bench. I'm on a bench which I've made quite low. So you could, for example, get yourself on a like, let's say you're from a chair and you go to something a little lower, and one of the first places to start is learning how to get yourself to the floor from a chair. So like she's ataxic with a completely paralyzed right side, and so she was just getting down this way, and then when she got here, she would end up falling because she didn't have the strength. But that is a really good way, Kathy, if you're wondering, combining putting yourself down to the ground and letting yourself embrace the collapse when you get down there is a really good beginning to learning how to fall. It's kind of how I often do it. And then I take it up a notch for different reasons. But if you can play around with that idea, and if you're not sure, you put cushions. Like with this lady, I had a mat. You could put sofa cushions down. You could make it so it's not as scary as that, right? But that's where I would start.
I think
Okay, thank you.
the last question we'll take is from Lori in BC. I think you had one, and then
Hey, actually, don't worry about it.
oh, okay.
I answered my own question.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, thanks, Chantal, for taking the time to meet with us. It looks like your dog is like getting into some sort of trouble. It was going back and forth the whole interview.
Yeah, because I just got home and he's like, why is she not cuddling with me on the sofa?
But anyways, thanks again for taking the time to speak with us today. And I'll certainly send you an email with some links to videos and stuff, and we can chat further later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You have my contact information. Reach out. Whatever I can do, I'm happy to help.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Joe.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.